explain, many of the things that the clerk does. To many voters, it may not make sense or seem obvious for why the clerk needs to be elected in a partisan race, and possibly not at all. Besides the obvious fact that this was constitutionally required, do you see any importance, and where do you see to explain to the voters for having this position elected and as a partisan race? Okay.
Thank you. That's an interesting question because during my campaign, I have ran into a multitude of people in the public. They are asking that very same question. It's like, why does it have to be partisan? And it's something that I believe that should be partisan when you come in, because I believe that people are looking at a particular type of philosophy in terms of coming into the office. So for me, yes, I think that it should be partisan. Now, the reality is that once you are elected, you have to work with both parties. And this is where it's confusing for some of the public, because they feel that, since you're working with both parties, why should it be, a partisan type of race? Well, it's a difficult question for me to answer in that respect, but personally, I think that it should be partisan when you come in. Thank you.
The position is partisan. It's a very difficult position, different from the other elected county level positions, because you do have to administer elections. You have your core beliefs, which run along the party lines and party affiliations, but you have to separate those beliefs in order to administer the elections in a nonpartisan, non-biased, fair fashion. You have to be able to pull back and know when to do that, and also to maintain the confidence of all the voters, not just one political party, but you have to maintain confidence from all the voters on all levels. There's been discussion, there's a difference of opinion between municipal clerks who are nonpartisan and county clerks who are partisan. And you'll get a difference of opinion even on the county level of the clerks that feel that it shouldn't be partisan. I think it does show the voters, I think, where your affiliations, your core beliefs lies. I don't think it's a bad thing, as long as you can separate yourself from those nonpartisan when you're administering elections. Scott?
Well, it's interesting. I would have said maybe 3 or 4 years ago that the county board should be partisan, and all their other offices like sheriff and coroner, coroner's now medical examiner, but these offices should be nonpartisan. But the last couple of years have changed my mind. I think we need strong voices to stand up to what's going on right now in the state of Wisconsin. Attacks on gays and lesbians and their rights, that needs to stop, and it needs to have a strong voice to defend them. We need a strong voice to say disenfranchising voters is wrong. Frankly, I've seen a lot of clerks around the state, they're too afraid of making waves. They don't stand up strong enough to what's going on in the State House. And that would be certainly not a problem for me. We passed an ordinance here in the county that says if you need a birth certificate to get an ID so that you can vote, we're waiving that fee. Only 2 counties have done that. That's how we can sort of highlight this issue and push back and make sure everyone in this county who has the right to vote can vote, and also to change the attitudes. Look what's happened now across the country. Before, marriage equality was, not an issue that was polling that well. Well, it's changing, and then that comes from starting the fight and starting the conversation. And that's why I think having a partisan clerk makes sense. That you can express those values on these important issues that the clerk oversees.
Well, an excellent historical example of why we need to have elected clerks is the state of North Carolina in the waning days of Reconstruction. In western and along the shore of North Carolina in the late 1800s, coalitions of working class whites and middle class blacks elected their clerks and sheriffs and other county, what we would call our county courthouse offices. And in the counties where Republicans were elected, ironically back then, that is where the black franchise was respected. They changed the state constitution and appointed those offices from the governor, and the right to vote for blacks ended overnight in North Carolina and closed the Reconstruction era. I think one of the reasons why this historically is on the November ballot is a response to that from our progressive era reforms to make sure that it is the widest electorate possible having a say in electing these offices. And so I think it's critically important that the voters know where their candidate stands. A party label alone, though, is not good enough to do that. You know, we need to make sure that not only are we running as Democrats, but articulating why and what it means to be a Democrat. I mean, Diane, in 2010, you stood up with the Fitzgerald brothers at a press conference titled the Democrat Voter Fraud Bill, and that concerns me. You advocated restricting the early voting period. As I believe as a Democrat that I strongly disagree with those, and I would fight to extend the early voting period back. You know, I think these are critical issues that we take. At the same time, we have to be professionals. That if we don't have the professional experience and the knowledge already to do the job and are just partisan, then we're Kathy Nicholas. And that is a standard that can never be acceptable.